My name is Archer, 62 years old, a retired construction engineer with calloused hands and fading dreams. I spent $30,000 on a family vacation to Hawaii, emptying my retirement savings for what Thomas promised would be unforgettable. Standing at the airport with my new luggage and sunblock, I felt young again. Until my son looked at me with cold eyes and said, "Dad, I forgot to buy you a ticket. Just go home." Before I tell you about the heartbreak of being betrayed by my own flesh and blood, share where you are watching from and hit subscribe if you have ever felt used by those you loved the most. For 40 years, I poured concrete, erected steel beams, and built structures that would outlast me. My hands developed permanent calluses, my back a perpetual ache, but I never complained. Not once. It was all for my children, Thomas and Jessica, after their mother Linda passed away from cancer when they were just 8 and 5. Cancer took my wife quickly, leaving me a widower at 32 with 2 small children who needed everything I could give them. Every morning I would wake up at 4:30 a.m., prepare their lunches, lay out their clothes, and then head to construction sites across 3 counties. I would return home exhausted, muscles screaming, but still find energy to help with homework, attend school functions, and tuck them in at night. There were no weekends off in our household. If I was not working overtime at construction sites, I was fixing our modest home or taking on side jobs to put away money for their college funds. "Dad, I want to go to Stanford," Thomas told me when he was 16, his eyes bright with ambition. It nearly broke me to hear those words, knowing the astronomical cost, but I smiled and said, "Then we better work hard to make that happen." I took on dangerous demolition jobs that paid extra worked holidays and sold our family cabin that had been my only inheritance from my father. Jessica was equally ambitious. "I am going to be a doctor," she announced in her junior year of high school. "I want to help people like Mom." Her words simultaneously filled me with pride and dread, knowing medical school would cost even more than Thomas's education. But again, I found a way, refinancing our home and postponing my own retirement by an additional 5 years. The sacrifices were endless, but unquestioned. I skipped medical treatments for my deteriorating knees. I drove the same pickup truck for 20 years, patching it together with parts from junkyards. I never took vacations, never bought new clothes unless absolutely necessary, and lived on the simplest meals so they could have everything they needed. Not just necessities, but the extras too. The right clothes to fit in at school, sports equipment, music lessons, computers, proms, graduation parties. It all paid off, or so I thought. Thomas graduated from Stanford with honors and quickly climbed the corporate ladder at a tech company in Seattle. By 30, he was an executive with a beautiful home overlooking Puget Sound. He married Stephanie, a marketing director, and they had 2 children, Emma and Jack, now 10 and 8. Jessica fulfilled her dream of becoming a doctor, specializing in cardiology. She married Kevin, a hospital administrator, and they had 1 son, Nathan, who just turned 6. They lived in a gated community in Portland, with a vacation home at Mount Hood. I was proud, so incredibly proud. But as their lives grew more affluent and busy, our connections weakened. Thomas called maybe once a month usually while multitasking something else. Jessica sent text messages on holidays, and my birthday occasionally with pictures of Nathan. Visits became rare, usually just a hurried dinner when they happened to be in town for other reasons. After I retired at 60, the loneliness became more apparent. My small retirement party had neither of my children present. Thomas sent a generic gift card with his assistant's signature. Jessica called briefly, promising to visit soon, a promise that remained unfulfilled for months. The house felt emptier than ever. So when Thomas called me on a random Tuesday evening 3 months ago, his voice unusually enthusiastic, I felt a surge of hope. "Dad, we have been thinking. The whole family needs to reconnect. We want to do a big family vacation to Hawaii, all of us together. Yumi, Jessica, the spouses, all the grandkids. What do you think? My heart swelled. That sounds wonderful, son. When are you thinking? Next month. We found this amazing resort on Maui. Private beach access, multiple pools, activities for the kids. It would be perfect for making memories. For the first time in years, I felt truly included. I began imagining building sandcastles with my grandchildren, teaching them to swim in the ocean, as I had taught their parents family dinners, watching the sunset. Maybe even heart-to-heart conversations with my grown children, repairing the distance that had grown between us. Then came the catch. The thing is, Dad, Thomas continued, his voice taking on a tone I recognized from his childhood when he wanted something expensive. With all of us going, it is pretty costly. Since Jessica and I are taking time off work and we are covering our families, we were hoping you could handle the accommodations and activities. You always talked about wanting to see Hawaii someday, and this way we all get to go together. I hesitated for just a moment. My retirement savings were modest, carefully calculated to last my remaining years if I lived frugally. But the prospect of reconnecting with my family, of being genuinely included again, was too powerful to resist. How much would it be? I asked. About $30,000, Thomas replied quickly, as if he had been waiting for this question. But Dad, think about it. This could be the trip of a lifetime. The memories we would make together would be priceless. And honestly, what else would you spend your retirement on that would be more meaningful than family? His words struck a chord. What else indeed? I had worked my entire life for my family. My retirement fund had always been for them in my mind anyway. And perhaps this investment would revitalize our relationships, bring us closer again. Okay, I said. I will do it. Thomas's enthusiasm seemed to double. Great, I will send you the account information to transfer the money. We will handle all the bookings once you send it over. This is going to be amazing, Dad. A vacation you will never forget. Those words would prove more prophetic than I could have imagined. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into preparation with a vigor I had not felt in years. I bought new summer clothes, swim trunks, sunglasses, and sandals. I purchased a high-quality digital camera to document every precious moment with my grandchildren. I even bought small gifts for each family member to present once we arrived at the resort. I read guidebooks about Maui, researched the best family-friendly activities, and even tried to learn a few Hawaiian phrases to amuse the grandkids. Each night I fell asleep imagining the joy on their faces as we explored tide pools, the laughter as we ate shaved ice, the conversations on lanais overlooking the ocean. For the first time since retirement, I felt truly alive, filled with purpose and anticipation. This trip was going to heal everything. I was sure of it. Airports always made me nervous. The crowds, the confusing signage, the constant announcements overhead. But on that Friday morning, my anxiety was overpowered by excitement. I arrived 3 hours early, my new suitcase packed with carefully selected items, my passport and identification ready in my breast pocket. I sat in the terminal watching families rush by, imagining my own grandchildren running through these same halls, soon perhaps holding my hand. Every few minutes I checked my phone for messages from Thomas or Jessica, confirming their arrival times. At 8:15 a.m., I spotted Thomas and his family approaching. Emma and Jack walked beside Stephanie, all three dressed in coordinating outfits that looked brand new. Thomas trailed behind, focused on his phone, barely looking up as they approached. "Grandpa," Emma called, rushing forward to give me a quick hug. Jack offered a shy wave but stayed beside his mother. "You are early," Thomas commented, finally pocketing his phone. There was no hug, just a quick pat on my shoulder. Wanted to make sure I did not miss anything, I replied, smiling broadly. I am so excited for this trip. I have been reading all about the beaches and activities. Thomas and Stephanie exchanged a quick glance I could not quite interpret. Before I could ask about it, Jessica appeared with Kevin and Nathan. Dad, Jessica said, with a polite smile leaning in for the briefest of cheek kisses. Nathan hid behind his father's legs, apparently not remembering the grandfather he had seen so infrequently. As we stood there, I had began noticing odd details. Everyone had boarding passes in hand or on their phones. Everyone except me. Thomas, should we check in? I do not have my boarding pass yet, I said. Another glance between my children. Let us go to the counter, Thomas said, his voice oddly flat. Dad, come with me for a minute. We stepped away from the group, moving toward a quieter corner of the terminal. My stomach began to tighten with apprehension. Dad, there is a bit of a situation, Thomas began, not quite meeting my eyes. The thing is, we could not get a ticket for you. What do you mean I gave you the money weeks ago? $30,000 should more than cover everyone's tickets and the resort. Thomas shifted uncomfortably. Well, the resort was more expensive than we thought. And the flights went up in price. We tried, but in the end, there just was not enough for your ticket, too. I stared at him, confusion turning slowly to disbelief. You are telling me that $30,000 was not enough to include me on this trip, the trip I paid for? Dad, do not make this difficult, Thomas said, his voice lowering. Look, these things happen. We can plan another trip some other time that includes you. But right now, all our reservations are set. The kids are excited. We cannot change everything at the last minute. Jessica approached, apparently sensing the tension. What is going on? Dad is upset because we could not get him a ticket, Thomas explained. Jessica's expression showed momentary surprise before settling into something resembling pity. Oh, Dad, I am sorry about that. But you know how these things go. Planning for so many people is complicated. Maybe it is better anyway. You always get tired so easily now. A long flight and all the activities would probably be too much for you. I looked between my two children, these adults I had raised with everything I had to give. Let me get this straight. I paid $30,000 for a family vacation to Hawaii, and now you are telling me I am not going. That I should just go home while all of you enjoy the trip I funded. When you put it that way, it sounds bad, Thomas said with a frown. But really, Wad, it is a gift from you to us, a way to support your family. I wanted to support our family by being with our family, I said, my voice beginning to shake. Let me just buy my own ticket now. There must be seats available. Actually, the flight is completely full, Jessica interjected quickly. We checked already. There is simply no way to get you on this flight or any flight today. Something about her tone made me suspicious. I pulled out my phone and opened the airline's app, searching for flights to Maui that day. There were at least a dozen seats available on their flight, and several other flight options throughout the day. I turned the screen toward them. There are plenty of seats available. Thomas sighed deeply, as if I were a difficult child. Dad, those are probably premium seats that cost thousands of dollars. It just is not practical. Look, we need to go check in now. Why do not you just head home and enjoy some quiet time? We will bring you back souvenirs and show you all the pictures. From a few feet away, I noticed Kevin and Stephanie watching our interaction, both looking uncomfortable but saying nothing. The grandchildren seemed confused by the tension. What about my $30,000? I asked, my voice now steady with growing anger. If I am not going, I want my money back. Dad, that money was a gift, Thomas said firmly. You gave it to us for this family vacation, and the family is going on vacation. Except me, The person who paid for it. "We will talk about this when we get back," Jessica said, checking her watch. "We really need to get through security now. Our flight board's in 40 minutes. Thomas nodded. "Go home, Dad. We will call you when we land in Maui." And with that, my children turned away, rejoining their spouses and children. I stood frozen in place as they walked toward security, Thomas ushering his family forward without looking back. Jessica gave one backward glance, a small wave, then continued on. I remained in that spot long after they had disappeared through the security checkpoint. Fellow travelers rushed past me, families excited for their adventures, business people hurrying to meetings. And there I stood, a 62-year-old man with a suitcase full of Hawaiian shirts and sunblock, $30,000 poorer and completely alone. The drive home was a blur of confusion and pain. Had I misunderstood something fundamental about the trip? Had I somehow agreed to pay for a vacation I would not be part of? No. No matter how I replayed Thomas's invitation in my mind, it had clearly been presented as a family trip that included me. My hands shook as I unlocked my empty house, the silence mocking the excitement I had felt just hours before. I left my suitcase by the door, unable to bear the thought of unpacking all the items I had so carefully selected for a trip I would never take. The initial shock gave way to a deeper, more cutting pain as the reality of what had happened sank in. I spent that first day in a daze, moving from chair to couch to bed without purpose, my mind replaying the scene at the airport over and over. By the evening, I found myself mindlessly scrolling through social media, something I rarely did. There it was, already a post from Thomas showing the family at the airport gate, captioned, "Hawaii-bound family adventure begins." The photos showed Thomas, Stephanie, Emma, Jack, Jessica, Kevin, and Nathan all smiling broadly. There was no mention of me, no acknowledgement of my absence or my contribution. The comments beneath were filled with well wishes and expressions of envy from friends and colleagues. "Family time is so precious," wrote one of Thomas's co-workers. "Making memories that will last a lifetime," commented one of Jessica's friends. I felt physically ill reading these messages, seeing the carefully crafted image of the perfect family vacation that deliberately excluded the person who had made it possible. I closed the app, but the damage was done. The public celebration of my exclusion made the betrayal even more humiliating. The following morning, I realized I had left my reading glasses at Thomas's house the previous weekend, when I had gone over to discuss final trip details. He had asked me to drop off some additional cash for unexpected expenses that might arise during the vacation. Another $2,000 I had withdrawn from my increasingly depleted accounts. I still had the key Thomas had given me years ago for emergencies, so I drove to his house to retrieve my glasses before they returned. His house would be empty for the next 10 days while they enjoyed their Hawaiian getaway. The glasses were right where I had left them, on the small desk in Thomas's home office. As I picked them up, I noticed his computer was still on the screen showing his email inbox. I had never been one to snoop, had always respected my children's privacy, but something compelled me to look closer at the screen. There, near the top of the inbox, was an email from Jessica, with the subject line, "Re-Dad's Hawaii Contribution." The preview showed just enough text to freeze me in place. "Do you think $30K is enough to cover everything we want to do? What BB we should ask for?" My finger moved to the mouse before I could stop myself. I clicked on the email and began reading. "Do you think $30K is enough to cover everything we want to do? We should ask for another $5K for unexpected expenses. He never questions anything when we say it is for the family." By the way, I confirmed with the resort that our 3 adjoining ocean view suites are reserved. The private excursion to the volcano is booked too. Dad would never be able to make that hike anyway, so it is better this way. Thomas had replied, "Already handled." Told him we needed another $2K for emergencies. He handed it over, no questions asked. As for the ticket situation, I think our plan is solid. We will just tell him at the airport that we could not get him a ticket due to availability issues. By then it will be too late for him to do anything about it. He will just have to go home. Maybe feel a little bad, but he will get over it. He always does. Jessica's response. Perfect. Kevin is a little uncomfortable with the whole thing, but I told him Dad is happy just helping us have these experiences. Honestly, what else is he going to spend his retirement on? It is not like he has any real hobbies or friends. At least this way, the money is benefiting his grandchildren. Thomas, exactly. And do not forget we need to start working on him about selling the house when we get back. The market is hot right now, and that place is way too big for just him. If we can convince him to downsize and invest the difference with me, we could access another $200K at least. I have got a few investment opportunities lined up that could really use a cash injection. Jessica. Brilliant. The old man is sitting on a gold mine with that house, and it is just going to waste. Between the house proceeds and whatever is left of his retirement accounts, we could really set ourselves up nicely. And it is not like we are taking it from a stranger. We are his kids. It would all come to us eventually anyway. I sat down heavily in Thomas's office chair, my legs no longer able to support me. There it was in black and white. Not a misunderstanding, not a mistake. A deliberate, calculated plan to take my money and exclude me from the very experience I had paid for. And worse, an ongoing scheme to separate me from everything else I had. I scrolled through more emails between them, each more damning than the last. References to the old man and his stash. Jokes about how easily I handed over money whenever they mentioned the grandchildren. Discussions about how to handle me if I became difficult about the house sale. In one particularly painful exchange, Thomas had written, "Remember when Dad wanted to come to Emma's recital last month, and I told him it was canceled. He actually drove by the school that night to drop off flowers for her, and saw all the cars in the parking lot. Called me all confused. I just told him it was for a different event, and he totally bought it. I do feel a little bad sometimes, but honestly, the kids get so uncomfortable around him with his old-fashioned values and constant stories about working hard and earning your way. It brings down the whole vibe." The pain was physical now, a crushing weight on my chest. I printed several of the most incriminating emails, my hands shaking so badly I could barely operate the printer. Then methodically, I searched for more evidence of their deception. I found spreadsheets tracking my assets, estimated value of my possessions, projections of my life expectancy based on family history and current health. There were notes about which approaches worked best when asking for money. Jessica found that mentioning Nathan's education was particularly effective, while Thomas discovered that suggesting family unity and experiences was my weakness. In one folder labeled Dad's Support, I found records going back years, requests for help with down payments, car purchases, vacation, funding, home renovations, all carefully tracked and tallied, not with gratitude but with calculations of how much more they might extract. The most disturbing discovery was a draft of my will created using some online service with forged signatures and witnesses, leaving everything neatly divided between Thomas and Jessica. Next to it was a folder containing a series of tutorials on how to use Photoshop to replicate signatures. As night fell, I sat in my son's darkened office, surrounded by printed evidence of years of manipulation and deceit. The beautiful Hawaiian vacation was just the latest in a long line of extractions, but it was perhaps the cruelest for the naked clarity of my exclusion. I drove home in the dark, the stack of papers on the passenger seat beside me, like a silent witness to the unraveling of everything I thought I knew about my family. The house I returned to no longer felt like a place that had sheltered generations of memories, but rather a target, an asset to be liquidated by the very people I had sacrificed everything to raise. Sleep did not come that night. Instead, I lay awake remembering. Thomas at 7 sitting on my shoulders, at a parade his small hands, patting my head in excitement. Jessica at 10 proudly showing me her science project that I had stayed up 3 nights helping her complete after my long workdays. First days of school, graduations. The look of pride and love in their eyes when I scraped together enough for special Christmas gifts or birthday celebrations. Where had those children gone? At what point had they transformed from the loving young people I raised into these calculating adults who saw me as nothing more than a resource to be drained? Had they always been this way, and I had been too blind to see it? Or had something in their adult lives changed them so fundamentally? The questions circled endlessly as dawn broke, bringing no clarity, a deepening sense of loss, more profound than even my wife's death. Linda's passing had been a tragedy, but it had been honest in its pain. This betrayal felt like her death all over again, but with the added knife twist of deliberate cruelty from the 2 people I loved most in the world. 1 week into their Hawaiian vacation, the first messages began arriving. Not calls, just texts, photos of beaches and pools, brief notes about activities, nothing acknowledging the circumstances of their departure or asking how I was doing alone at home. Then came the first direct communication since the airport, a call from Thomas on the 8th day of their trip. "Hey Dad, how are you doing?" His voice sounded relaxed, sun-soaked. "Fine," I replied, my own voice hollow. "Great, great. Listen, I have been thinking about your house situation. You know that place is really too big for just you now. All those stairs, all that maintenance. It cannot be good for you at your age." My grip tightened on the phone. "My house situation. Yeah, I was talking to a real estate buddy of mine. The market in your area is on fire right now. You could make a killing if you sold. We could find you a nice little 1-level place, maybe in a retirement community, with people your own age, and then you could invest the difference with my firm. We are seeing some really stellar returns right now on a few exclusive opportunities." The audacity was breathtaking. Not even home from spending my money on their luxury vacation, and already he was moving to the next phase of their plan. "I am not interested in selling my home," I said flatly. "Dad, do not be hasty. This is a financial opportunity that will not last forever. You need to think about your future. What if you need long-term care? Assisted living is expensive. This could be your chance to really secure yourself and maybe leave something substantial for the grandkids' education." The manipulation was so transparent now that I could see the pattern. The mention of the grandchildren. The suggestion that I might become a burden. The artificial urgency. "My future is just fine, Thomas. I have to go now." I hung up before he could respond, my hands shaking with suppressed rage. 20 minutes later, Jessica called. "Dad, Thomas just called me. He says you seemed upset. Is everything okay?" "Everything is fine," I replied. "Good, good. Listen, while I have you on the phone, I wanted to talk to you about an amazing investment opportunity Kevin and I just heard about. It is this medical technology startup that is absolutely going to revolutionize cardiac care. Ground floor opportunity, but they are only accepting a limited number of investors. Minimum buy-in is $50,000, but for family, they might be willing to accept a bit less. I thought of you immediately." The familiar pattern again. Different angle, same objective. "Not interested, Jessica. Enjoy the rest of your vacation." "Dad, wait. This is really a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Your money could literally be doubled within a year. I would not bring this to you if I was not 100% confident. You trust my judgment, right?" "I have got to go, Jessica. Goodbye." A text from her followed moments later. "Dad, please call me back. I'm worried about you. You don't sound like yourself." Of course, I did not sound like myself. The self she knew, the compliant father who handed over money without question, who accepted exclusion and manipulation with a smile that self was gone. Later that afternoon, I received an unexpected call from James Forrester, an old friend from my construction days who had gone on to become a construction law attorney. We had fallen out of regular contact over the years, but maintained a Christmas card relationship. "Archer, how the hell are you? I was in your neighborhood meeting a client and thought I might swing by if you are free for a coffee." The normalcy of the invitation almost brought me to tears after days of isolation and emotional turmoil. "I would like that, James. Come on over." An hour later, we sat on my back porch, two aging men with steaming mugs and a plate of store-bought cookies between us. The conversation started with casual catching up news of his children and grandchildren, updates on mutual acquaintances. But something in my demeanor must have signaled my distress. "Archer, forgive me for saying so, but you look like hell. Is everything all right?" Perhaps it was the simple human kindness in his tone, or just the breaking point of too many days carrying this burden alone, but the whole story came pouring out. The vacation money, the airport betrayal, the discovered emails, the ongoing manipulation. James listened without interruption, his expression growing increasingly grave. When I finally fell silent, he placed his mug down deliberately. "Archer, what your children have done is not just morally wrong, it potentially crosses into legal fraud. Taking money under false pretenses, planning to manipulate you into financial decisions, creating forged documents. These are serious matters." "They are still my children," I said weakly. "Yes, and that makes their actions worse, not better. Look, I have seen this before with elderly clients. Financial abuse by family members is tragically common, but usually the victims either do not recognize what is happening or are too ashamed to take action." "I do feel ashamed," I admitted, "like I have failed as a father to raise decent human beings." "This is not a reflection on your parenting, Archer. This is about the choices two grown adults have made, choices they are responsible for, and choices that will continue and escalate if there are no consequences." James helped me see the situation with painful clarity. This was not an isolated incident or a misunderstanding. It was part of a calculated, ongoing campaign to strip me of my assets while I was still alive. The Hawaii vacation was just a particularly cruel installment in their plan. Over the next 2 days, with James's help, I began discovering even more troubling information. Thomas had been making a series of increasingly risky investments that had gone badly. He was in significant debt and had already mortgaged his home to the limit. His desperation for cash explained his aggressive push for me to sell my house. Jessica's situation was equally alarming. James helped me uncover evidence that she was being investigated for insurance billing irregularities at her practice. There were substantial funds unaccounted for, and she was potentially facing not just financial penalties, but possible loss of her medical license if found guilty of deliberate fraud. Both of my children were in serious trouble of their own making, and both had independently identified the same solution: Dad's retirement savings and home equity. The most painful discovery came through a chance phone call. Little Emma Thomas's daughter called me on her mother's phone when they returned to their hotel room one afternoon. "Grandpa, we went snorkeling today and I saw a sea turtle. It was so big." "That sounds wonderful, sweetheart," I said, my heart aching at her innocent excitement. "Daddy said you were too busy to come with us, but I wish you were here. Nathan got scared of the fish, but I was brave." "I wish I was there too, Emma." Daddy says we need to be extra nice to you when we get home because you might give us money for a pool in our backyard. Is that true, Grandpa? Are you going to buy us a pool? I heard Stephanie's voice in the background suddenly, and Emma saying, I am just talking to Grandpa about the pool like Daddy said to. Then Stephanie came on the line, flustered. Archer, hi, sorry about that. Emma should not have called without asking. It is all right. We were having a nice chat. Well, we need to get ready for dinner now. Say goodbye, Emma. After a muffled goodbye from my granddaughter, the call ended, leaving me with yet another piece of the puzzle. Not only were my children using me as a financial resource, they were actively teaching my grandchildren to view me the same way. By the time Thomas, Jessica, and their families returned from Hawaii, I had done something I never thought I would need to do. I had developed a strategy for protecting myself from my own children. With James's help, I had consulted with a proper estate attorney, Rebecca Winters. Together, we had reviewed my finances, my property, and my legal options. I had changed my will, removing Thomas and Jessica as primary beneficiaries, and instead establishing small trust funds for my grandchildren that would become available to them at age 25, with the bulk of my estate designated for several charities supporting working families and education programs. I had moved my money to new accounts at a different bank, placing safeguards that required in-person verification for large withdrawals. I had documented the Hawaii vacation transaction, thoroughly compiling a demand letter for repayment of the fraudulently obtained funds. Most importantly, I had made a decision. No more enabling, no more manipulation, no more sacrificing my dignity and financial security to fund people who saw me as nothing but a resource. 3 days after their return, I invited Thomas and Jessica to my home, requesting they come without their spouses or children. They arrived separately, Thomas 15 minutes late, both looking tanned and refreshed from their vacation. Dad, you look tired, Jessica said as she hugged me briefly. Are you feeling okay? I am fine, I replied, gesturing for them to sit at the dining room table where I had arranged folders of printed emails and financial records. What is all this? Thomas asked, eyeing the papers with suspicion. Documentation, I replied simply. Of the $30,000 I provided for a family vacation to Hawaii that I was deliberately excluded from. Of the conversations between you two planning this exclusion from the beginning. Of your plans to manipulate me into selling my home. Of your forged version of my will. Should I continue? The color drained from both their faces. Dad, I do not know what you are talking about, Jessica began. I slid a printed email across the table, one of their exchanges, explicitly discussing how to handle telling me I would not be going on the trip. I was at your house retrieving my reading glasses, Thomas. Your computer was on. Your emails were open. I saw everything. You went through my private emails, Thomas sputtered, attempting to shift to offense. That is a complete invasion of privacy. You had no right. And you had no right to take $30,000 from me under false pretenses. No right to conspire to manipulate me out of my home. No right to forge legal documents with my signature. My voice remained steady, controlled. Dad, you are blowing this way out of proportion. Jessica tried her doctor voice, activated, calm, and slightly condescending. Yes, the vacation situation was unfortunate, but we always intended to make it up to you. And these other things you are talking about, they are just ideas, thoughts, nothing we seriously planned to act on. I pulled out another document. This is a formal demand for repayment of the $30,000 plus the additional $2,000 you extracted for so-called emergency expenses. You have 30 days to return these funds in full, or I will pursue legal action for fraud. Legal action against your own children, Dad. You cannot be serious. Thomas stood up, his face flushed with anger now. After everything we have been through as a family, you would sue us over a misunderstanding about a vacation. This was not a misunderstanding. It was a calculated deception, clearly documented in your own words. I tapped the folders. And it is part of a pattern of financial exploitation that stops today. This is ridiculous, Jessica snapped. You are an elderly man living alone, clearly becoming paranoid and confused. If anyone heard about this wild overreaction, they would question your mental competence. That is why I have already undergone a complete cognitive assessment with a geriatric specialist, I replied calmly. Dr. Margaret Whelan has provided a sworn statement affirming my complete mental competence. I anticipated you might try to claim I am losing my faculties when confronted. This silenced them momentarily, the prepared counterattack neutralized. In addition, I continued, I have changed my will. You are both removed as beneficiaries. I have set up modest trust funds for my grandchildren, but the majority of my estate will go to charitable causes I believe in. You cannot do that, Thomas said, his voice rising. We are your children, your only family. I can and I have. Being family means love, respect, and care, not exploitation. I looked between them, these strangers wearing my children's faces. I have also documented your financial situations. Thomas, your failed investments and mounting debt. Jessica, the investigation into your billing practices. Is this why you have become so desperate for my money to bail yourselves out of self-created problems? Their shocked expressions confirmed my suspicions. They had no idea I knew about their respective troubles. Dad, whatever you think you know, you do not understand the full picture. Thomas began, his tone suddenly placating. I have had some temporary setbacks, yes, but my investments are about to turn around, and I wanted your involvement not to bail me out, but to give you an opportunity to grow your own money. And my billing situation is just a misunderstanding, Jessica added quickly. An administrative error that is being resolved. It looks worse than it is. Perhaps. But it does not change what you two have done. The lies, the manipulation, using my love for you and your children as a tool to extract money. I pushed the repayment demand letter forward again. 30 days. Either return my money or we will move forward with legal action. Dad, please. Jessica's voice cracked slightly, the first sign of genuine emotion. We are your children. You would really sue us, create a public scandal, destroy our family over money. This has never been about money. I replied, my own emotion finally breaking through. This is about respect, about recognizing that I am not an ATM or a resource to be drained, but a human being who deserves better than to be lied to and manipulated by the two people I sacrificed everything for. I stood up, signaling the end of the conversation. You have 30 days, and regardless of your decision about the money, know this: our relationship moving forward will be different. There will be boundaries. There will be honesty. Or there will be nothing at all. They left in stunned silence, Thomas slamming his car door hard enough to shake the windows, Jessica sitting in her parked car for nearly 20 minutes before finally driving away. That night, I slept better than I had since the airport betrayal. Not because I took joy in their discomfort, but because for the first time in years, perhaps decades, I had stood up for my own worth. The next few weeks brought a barrage of attempted manipulations from both Thomas and Jessica. First came the apologies, carefully worded, but clearly insincere, focused more on my misinterpretation of events than on their actual actions. Dad, we are so sorry you felt excluded from the vacation. That was never our intention. Dad, those emails were just venting. Everyone says things they do not mean sometimes. When apologies did not work, they shifted to guilt. Thomas sent photos of Emma and Jack looking sad, claiming they were devastated that Grandpa is angry with their daddy. Jessica called in tears, saying Nathan had asked why I did not love them anymore. I remained firm, reminding them that my issue was with their behavior, not with my love for my grandchildren. I even arranged to video chat directly with the children, carefully avoiding any mention of the conflict with their parents, while assuring them of my continued love. When guilt proved ineffective, they tried anger. Thomas called late one night, clearly having been drinking. "You know what, Dad? You were never there for us growing up. Always working, always too busy. Maybe if you had been a better father, we would be better children. Ever think of that? This is your failure, not ours." I let him rant, recognizing the desperate lashing out of someone who had run out of manipulation tactics. When he finally paused for breath, I simply said, "I love you, Thomas, but I will not be manipulated anymore. Good night." And I hung up. Jessica's approach was more subtle. She showed up at my house unannounced one afternoon with a small gift basket of my favorite snacks. "Peace offering," she said with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Dad, this whole thing has gotten so out of hand. We are family. We should not be at odds like this. Kevin and I were talking, and we want to invite you to dinner this weekend. Just a simple family meal to start rebuilding." I accepted the basket but declined the dinner. "I appreciate the gesture, Jessica, but rebuilding trust will take more than a meal. It will take honest acknowledgement of what happened and real change moving forward." Her smile faltered. "Dad, we said we are sorry. What more do you want from us, blood? This punitive approach is not healthy for anyone, least of all you. Holding on to anger like this at your age, it is not good for your heart." Even now, she was attempting to manipulate using my health as leverage. "My heart is just fine, Jessica. In fact, it is healthier now that I am being honest about my feelings and standing up for myself." About 3 weeks after our confrontation, something unexpected happened. Stephanie Thomas's wife called me. "Archer, it is Stephanie. I wanted to call to say I am sorry. I knew about the vacation plan, about you not having a ticket, and I did not say anything. I should have spoken up." Her voice sounded genuinely remorseful, not the calculated performance I had grown accustomed to from my children. "Why did not you?" I asked, not accusingly, but with real curiosity. Honestly, I was afraid to challenge Thomas. Our marriage has been difficult lately. With his financial problems, he has been under tremendous stress. He gets very angry when contradicted. She paused. "That is not an excuse, just an explanation. I should have been braver." This glimpse into their marriage troubled me. Had Thomas's treatment of me been an extension of problematic behavior in other relationships too? A similar call came from Kevin the next day. "Sir, I want you to know that I had no idea about the extent of what was happening. Jessica told me the vacation was your gift to us, that you preferred to stay home. I never saw those emails or knew about any plans regarding your house. If I had known..." He trailed off. "I believe you, Kevin," I said, and I did. The genuine shock in his voice could not be faked. These conversations with my children's spouses revealed another layer to the situation. Thomas and Jessica had been hiding their financial troubles and manipulative behavior not just from me, but from their own partners as well. Their desperation had been corroding all their relationships, not just their relationship with me. Meanwhile, I was making changes of my own. With James's encouragement, I joined a community center offering activities for seniors. At first, I went just to get out of the house, but soon I found myself enjoying the woodworking class, rekindling skills from my construction days in a more artistic context. I met Frank and Dennis, two other widowers who shared my interest in classic cars. We began meeting weekly to restore an old Mustang that Dennis had inherited from his brother, Harold and Marianne, a couple who had moved to town to be near their grandchildren, but found themselves similarly sidelined, invited me to join their hiking group. For the first time in years, I was developing friendships independent of my identity as Thomas and Jessica's dad. These were people who valued me for myself, who did not have an agenda or see me as a resource to be tapped. The contrast was both refreshing and painful in its clarity. As the 30-day deadline approached, I heard through Emma during one of our video chats that Thomas and Jessica had been arguing frequently, sometimes loudly enough that the children noticed. The family system I had inadvertently enabled through my compliance was showing stress fractures now that I had changed the pattern. On the 29th day, both Thomas and Jessica arrived at my house together. They looked tired, subdued, a marked contrast to their tanned, confident appearance just weeks before. "We have the money," Thomas said, without preamble handing me a cashier's check for $32,000. "It took some doing, but we managed to pull it together." "Thank you," I said, accepting the check. "I appreciate you doing the right thing." "Do you?" Jessica asked, her voice tight. "Because it feels like you have torn our family apart over this. Was it worth it, Dad? Was getting your money back worth destroying your relationship with your children?" I considered her question carefully. "I did not destroy our relationship, Jessica. You and Thomas did that when you decided I was worth more as a financial resource than as a father. What I did was establish that I will not accept being treated that way. The question now is whether we can build something new, something based on mutual respect rather than exploitation." "And how exactly do we do that?" Thomas asked, sounding genuinely uncertain. "We start with honesty," I replied. "Real honesty, not just what you think I want to hear. About your lives, your struggles, your needs. Not as a precursor to asking for money, but as part of an authentic relationship." "And then," Jessica pressed, "then we rebuild trust slowly, with clear boundaries and genuine care for each other, as people, not as utilities. It will take time. It will be uncomfortable. But it is possible if you both truly want it." They exchanged glances, a silent communication I could not interpret. Then Thomas spoke, his voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. "Dad, I am in serious financial trouble. Worse than you know. I might lose the house. The kids might have to change schools. I am scared." It was the first truly honest thing he had said to me in years. "And I," Jessica added after a moment, "am being investigated for insurance fraud. It started as cutting corners, then became systematic. I could lose my license, possibly face charges. I have been terrified to tell anyone, even Kevin." Their admissions hung in the air between us, raw and painful, but real. Not manipulations or setups for financial requests, just the truth of their struggles. "Thank you for telling me," I said simply. "That could not have been easy." "What now?" Thomas asked. "Are you going to help us?" "Not financially," I replied firmly. "That pattern is broken for good. But as your father who loves you, I will support you through whatever consequences come next. I will be there for my grandchildren if your circumstances change. I will not abandon you, but I also will not enable further self-destruction." It was not the answer they wanted, but it was the one they needed. The beginning of a new relationship built on reality rather than fantasy, on respect rather than exploitation. Whether it would flourish or wither remained to be seen, but at least now it had the chance to be authentic. As they left, Jessica paused at the door. "Dad, I am truly sorry. Not just for Hawaii, but for everything. For seeing you as a solution to my problems rather than as my father." Her eyes held genuine remorse for the first time. "I do not know if you can forgive me, but I hope someday you might." I hope so too, I replied honestly. One day at a time. 6 months after the airport betrayal, my life had transformed in ways I never could have predicted. The $32,000 returned by Thomas and Jessica had been put to good use funding, not a family vacation, but a personal journey of rediscovery. I had taken myself to Hawaii, after all, booking a 2-week tour specifically designed for solo travelers over 55. There, I met Roger and Patricia from Minnesota, Luis from New Mexico, Diane from Toronto, and several others who quickly became a close-knit group of friends. We exchanged contact information and had maintained regular video chats since returning home. In Hawaii, I discovered capabilities I had forgotten I possessed. I learned to kayak, navigating ocean waters with confidence. I tried snorkeling for the first time at 62, marveling at the underwater world I had never before witnessed. I hiked volcanic trails, danced at a traditional luau, and watched sunsets without worrying about anyone else's schedule or needs. "You know, Archer," Roger had said one evening, as our group shared drinks watching the sunset, "sometimes the worst betrayals lead us to the best chapters of our lives. If your kids had not done what they did, would you be here now experiencing all this?" He was right. As painful as the experience had been, it had broken patterns that needed breaking, forced growth that was long overdue, and ultimately led me to a richer life than the one I had been living. Back home, my new friendships from the community center continued to flourish. Frank Dennis and I completed the Mustang restoration and had begun taking weekend drives to car shows across the state. The hiking group with Harold and Marianne had expanded to include regular potluck dinners after our trails. I had even started dating something I had not done since Linda died. Nothing serious yet, but Martha, a retired librarian I met at a community center art class, had become a regular companion for movies and concerts. We enjoyed each other's company without pressure or expectations. Two independent people choosing to share experiences rather than needing each other to fill voids. My relationships with Thomas and Jessica remained works in progress. Thomas had indeed lost his home and had moved his family into a modest apartment. The transition had been difficult for everyone, especially the children who had to change schools and leave behind friends. But there were positive changes, too. Thomas had found a salaried position with a stable company less prestigious than his previous role, but with regular hours that allowed him more time with Emma and Jack. Jessica had faced professional consequences for her billing practices, including a 6-month suspension of her medical license and substantial financial penalties. She and Kevin had sold their vacation home and downsized to meet these obligations. The humbling experience had prompted her to begin therapy, where she was exploring the roots of her compulsion to project success and accumulate status symbols. Both my children were learning difficult lessons about priorities, values, and the consequences of their choices. Our interactions remained careful, the trust still fragile and in repair, but there was a new honesty between us that had been missing for decades. Most surprisingly, my relationships with my grandchildren had actually improved. Without the pressure to be the ATM grandfather or the expectation of lavish gifts, I could connect with them more authentically. I taught Jack basic woodworking skills, helped Emma with science projects, and read stories with Nathan over video calls. Stephanie had confided that Emma had said, "Grandpa is more fun now. He tells better stories and really listens." Out of the mouths of babes came the confirmation that by valuing myself more, I had become more valuable to others in the ways that truly mattered. Several of my cousins and Linda's siblings with whom I had lost touch over the years reached out after hearing about my Hawaii adventure through social media. My brother-in-law, Michael, Linda's younger brother, called from Arizona. "Archer, I have to say I have been worried about you all these years, thinking you were working yourself to death for those kids. When Linda died, you just shut down everything except being their dad. It is good to see you living for yourself now. Linda would be proud, you know. She always said you were too generous for your own good. The validation from someone who had known both Linda and me in our younger years was deeply affirming. Michael was right. Linda would want me to live fully, not exist solely as a support system for our adult children. The process of healing was not linear. There were still days of doubt, moments of grief, for what might have been pangs of sadness, when I saw other families with seemingly uncomplicated relationships between generations. But increasingly, these feelings were balanced by genuine contentment with the life I was creating for myself and the healthier dynamics I was establishing with my family. Life has taught me that true love is not measured by sacrifice or martyrdom, but by healthy balance between giving and receiving. For decades, I mistakenly believed that being a good father meant giving everything without expectation of return, depleting myself to fill others. Now I understand that the greatest gift I can offer my children and grandchildren is the example of self-respect, healthy boundaries, and the courage to stand in my own truth. Sometimes the most painful betrayals become our most powerful teachers. Being left at that airport with a suitcase full of Hawaiian shirts and sunblock $30,000 poorer, and completely alone felt like the end of everything. Instead, it became the beginning of a new journey, one where I finally included myself in the itinerary of my own life. The money was returned, but what I gained was worth infinitely more dignity, self-worth, authentic relationships, and the profound realization that it is never too late to change course and choose yourself. What do you think about establishing healthy boundaries with family members? Have you ever had to make the difficult choice between maintaining peace and standing up for yourself? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories about finding dignity and healing after betrayal. Remember, it is never too late to start prioritizing your own happiness. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to honor your worth in every relationship you have.